Welcome to another edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano. On today's program, we will learn all about the historic Blue Hill Weather Observatory in Milton, which recently underwent a pretty major renovation project. First, though, we check out the weather and the news for you. Currently in Quincy, brilliant sunshine. It is brisk, 41 degrees right now. Temperatures will top off in the mid-40s this afternoon with a mix of sun and clouds. Another chilly night tonight, not quite as cold as last night. Lows will drop down to about freezing, 32 degrees this evening. Kind of a carbon copy with tomorrow, sun and clouds, highs in the mid, maybe upper 40s tomorrow. Then we start our warming trend. Wednesday looks nice, lots of sunshine, just a few clouds, low 50s. And look at Thursday, spectacular, abundant sunshine, mild temperatures, up around 60 degrees. I think Friday will be warm as well. Right now, sunshine and 41 degrees here in Quincy. Checking news for you today, Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch is still relishing his re-election victory during last week's city election. The mayor was re-elected to a 7th term in office, defeating a challenge from Councilor at Large Ann Mahoney by 1,900 votes. Now, Koch said he was extremely grateful to his supporters, but also reached out to people who did not vote for him.
Always. You know, we have a pretty amazing team that works very hard for the city, and always encourage the public to reach out any time of need, any time of questions, concerns, suggestions. We really have a great team that incorporates people's thoughts and suggestions as well. If there's any issues or challenges, please reach out. We'll deal with those. Yeah, I mean, there's some folks that Joe will have never voted for me and will never vote for me, and that's okay. But all you need is 50% plus one. We got a 10% win, so I felt that the people of Quincy are generally satisfied with our performance. And again, I look forward to continue to work hard on behalf of every citizen of the city. And I certainly I got a chance to speak to Councilor Mahoney last night, and I told her she's a tough opponent, and I wish her well and her family well.
Koch was already the longest-serving mayor in Quincy history. He will have served 20 years in office at the end of his next 4-year term. There will also be 3 new members of the Quincy City Council and a new school committee member. Richard Ashe defeated Ward 2 Councilor Anthony Andronico by 55 votes. Retired Quincy Police Lieutenant Dan Minton ran unopposed for the vacant Ward 5 council seat, and Scott Campbell ran unopposed for the open at-large council seat. Courtney Perdios won one of the 3 school committee seats that were up for re-election. She ousted incumbent Frank Santoro. She'll be joining incumbents Kathy Hubley and Paul Brigoli. Almost 30% of Quincy voters cast ballots in last week's election. Looks like there will not be a recount in the Ward 2 City Council seat race here in Quincy. Incumbent Anthony Andronico says he will not be requesting a recount after losing to Quincy attorney Richard Ashe by 55 votes. Andronico is finishing up his first full 2-year term on the council, his 2nd term overall. He was first appointed to the seat when former Ward 2 Councilor Brad Kroll was forced to resign due to health reasons. Kroll endorsed Ashe this year, something that Ashe said held deep meaning for him.
You know, the letter that he wrote in support of me and his tips along the way, it's been amazing, invaluable. And he, held the seat for close to 10 years. He did a ton of great work. And he's who I look to as an example of a good counselor. I say the city council in Quincy can go 2 ways. You can go to the meetings and follow up with constituents, and that's fine. That's oftentimes that's more time consuming than a lot of people understand. Or it can be your entire life, and I think that's how it was for Brad. That's how it will be for me, whether that be this January or some Januaries to come.
Right.
And with Brad's projects, I think of the inclusive playground at Fall River. I think of the seniors program with the high school seniors helping out the senior citizen shoveling. All of those were his own initiative. He didn't have to. Those weren't part of the job. That's think outside the box. Really try to make sure and make your ward as best as it can be.
Ash had also lobbied for the Ward 2 Council appointment when Andronico was appointed. However, this year was the first time Ash's name appeared on the ballot. Lobbying has already begun for the next City Council presidents here in Quincy. Ward 3 Councilor Ian Kane ran unopposed this year. Says he's hoping to assume the council presidency during the next legislative session next year.
And actually, this time around, I'm hoping to gain the favor of the support from my colleagues to become council president.
Okay.
You know, I think
that was my next question.
Yeah, no, I'm very much interested in that role.
Really?
And,
okay.
you know, I'd looked at it quite differently over prior years, and I've had the chance to serve as, you know, finance committee chair. And I think, you know, now's the time to take a leadership position for the council as a whole. You know, so I'm hoping to have the support from my colleagues.
Kane was first elected to the Quincy City Council back in 2015. Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch asking the City Council to approve the taking of the IHOP restaurant property in Quincy Center by eminent domain. The administration wants that property for a project proposed by Atlantic Development of Hingham that would include a new 7-story, 300-unit apartment complex with ground-level retail space that may include a Trader Joe's supermarket, along with a restaurant and a bank. The city also wants to build a 1,000-space parking garage at that location. If the city takes the property by eminent domain, it would have to pay to relocate the IHOP restaurant. Property is owned by LBC Developers of Boston. They also own the nearby Nova Suites apartments. The city has applied for a $75 million state grant for the parking garage project. Quincy's annual Veterans Day parade and ceremony this past Saturday drew hundreds of participants and spectators. The parade stepped off in Quincy Center, made its way along Hancock Street, past the World War I Doughboy statue, and then onto the World War II Memorial at Marymount Park for the ceremony. The keynote speaker this year, Quincy Police Sergeant and retired U.S. Army Special Forces Green Beret, Colonel Donald Greenwood, who said it's important to not only remember and thank veterans, but also to make sure they get any help that they need.
I truly believe that collectively we owe a debt of gratitude to all veterans and must ensure that their needs are addressed when they return home from their service to the nation. While some veterans return with physical wounds that require rehabilitation and accommodation, other veterans carry with them the invisible wounds of mental trauma that can be just as debilitating. Additionally, veteran homelessness and veteran mental health issues remain all too prevalent today and have become a permanent fixture on the national landscape. I often reflect on the unnecessary anguish that Vietnam veterans suffered upon their return to an apathetic and sometimes openly hostile nation. Fortunately, we have come a long way in acknowledging the debt that we owe our veterans. Organizations such as the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, and the Disabled American Veterans have made it their mission to assist veterans in need and in crisis. Additionally, municipal services such as those provided by Christine Cugini, George Bouchard, and their team through the City of Quincy Department of Veteran Services provide critical referral services to all veterans. So
Greenwood is a Quincy native and a North Quincy High School graduate who's currently assigned to the Quincy Police Motorcycle Unit, serves as a SWAT supervisor, and is the department's range master. That's our check of news for you today. Coming up, we sit down with Don McCasland of the Blue Hill Weather Observatory in Milton. That's next. Welcome back. The Blue Hill Weather Observatory and Science Center in Milton is celebrating its 138th anniversary this year, and Special Director of Operations Don McCasland is here to tell us why. Hey Don, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me. So we're very proud to continue the record at Great Blue Hill. 138 years of homogeneous data using the same tools and the same techniques in the location that was founded by Abbott Lawrence Roach in 1885. We're only the 4th operators, but the key thing is that all 4 operators, us, our predecessor, the National Weather Service, Harvard, who ran it before that, and Abbott Lawrence, who's the founder, we study and measure the weather the exact same way, which makes us a really valuable climate resource.
Not only the same way, but as you mentioned, the same location and the same instruments, many of them dating back to the original founding of the center.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have the oldest continually operating mercury barometer in all the United States. It's been at the observatory since 1887 and used every single day since January 1st, 1888, except for February 7th, 1978. That was the only day it wasn't read.
Is that right?
Yeah, the roads were closed to everyone, including essential workers, so the observer couldn't get there that day. So that's the only day since 1888 that the mercury barometer has not been read.
Interesting. A little known fact. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. As I mentioned, 138 years old, and just recently underwent a pretty major, extensive renovation, right?
Yes, we're very lucky. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has owned the building since 1971. They've done a couple renovations back in the 1990s. They did a repair on the whole building, working on the stonework and concrete surfaces and some roofing work and things like that. That's actually what led to us taking over the operation. One of the grants that they got for restoring the building in the 90s required that the building be opened to the public. The Weather Service didn't have the resources or interest in doing that. The Commonwealth DCR, back then the MDC, didn't have the resources to welcome in the public, and the Blue Hill Observatory and Weather Club, which was the precursor to our nonprofit, said, we've got to get this grant, we've got to get the building restored so it doesn't crumble to the ground. And so we worked with the National Weather Service and the MDC to make a plan, and that plan was for us to take over the operations and open up and add the educational programming that we offer in addition to maintaining the weather observing program.
Right. So, which is a major part of your mission, right, is education. As I mentioned at the outset, it's the Blue Hill Weather Observatory and Science Center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the mission of our organization is first and foremost to ensure the long-term homogeneous data and to maintain this now 138-year-old climate record. But then we want to teach everyone why 138-year climate record, which is the longest in the entire Western Hemisphere, why is that valuable? And there's a lot of reasons. So our educational programs go for all levels from kindergarten through adult learners, and we do programs on what all the different instruments are and what they measure. That's really popular with third grade in Massachusetts because that's when the weather curriculum is taught in Massachusetts public schools is in third grade.
Okay.
So we have a lot of schools who like to come up and see the actual instruments and learn, oh, this is real. This isn't just something my teacher's telling me about. This is a real thing that scientists really do.
Right.
And so they see the actual thermometers, that barometer I mentioned, and the other more modern barometers and barographs. So they see the actual instruments. They learn the names of the instruments, what they measure, why we gather the data. For example, the reason a meteorologist wants to know where the wind is coming from, and other information. So we're really pleased to be able to share the observatory with many people of all ages.
What is all the data collected at the observatory used for, Don?
So the climate is something I've talked about a lot, and so it goes to the National Center for Environmental Information in Asheville, North Carolina, where they have the National Climate Data Center. So climatologists can look at all of our data and look at the trends and see, is warming real? The answer is yes. What other things are changing? Our wind speeds are decreasing. Our precipitation overall is increasing, even though until this year we've been having some dry years. Overall, our precipitation's increasing. Everyone would say, yeah, I believe that after the past summer that we had.
That's
with
right.
it raining every weekend.
Yes.
So they can see those trends and compare that to other sites around the world and really get a better understanding of global climate change. Thanks to our data, they're able to see it over a longer period of time. In addition to going to the climatologists,
Yes.
folks like the marine fisheries, they want to know how much water is going out into the harbors and rivers and everything like that. So they want to know our precipitation data every morning when it's rained the day before. It goes to the National Weather Service regional headquarters in Norton, Mass, and then they can send it out to the world.
Okay.
And that's used both by the forecasters in the Weather Service office, but then another part of the office in Norton is the Northeast River Forecast Center, and they want to know what is happening, both in terms of the precipitation, but also what's the evaporative rates like, what's the transpiration rate, what's the percentage of sunshine, because that impacts the river levels. It's not just how much is going into the rivers, but how much is going out of the soil and out of the lakes and rivers as well. So really diverse range of scientists who are using it. A while back when Hull was getting ready to install their second windmill, they sent folks up to us to analyze all of our wind data to help them figure out what the best turbine would be for the Hull 2 windmill.
Okay.
So there's a really diverse range of people that use the data.
Yeah. Talk a little bit, if you can, about the observatory structure, if you will, the governmental structure of the observatory with the board and then the staff and then
Sure.
the observers.
So I mentioned the Blue Hill Observatory Weather Club. It was founded in 1981 by Dr. William Mensinger, and he was the president of that until it got reformed into the Blue Hill Observatory and Science Center, an official 501c3. That happened in 1998. Dr. Mensinger continued to be the president of that organization until 2018. Our executive director, Charles Orloff, is a paid staff, so he's not on the board. He's not a board director, he's a staff director in charge of making sure that the place keeps the doors open and that I do my job and that the observers do their job. And he helps get a lot of the money. He lobbies the Commonwealth for the money that they help support us with. He works with our Director of Strategic Partnerships to find grants to help support us. He asks our members to give additional money beyond their annual dues. He helps support the educational programs that we do for our members. Like we just had a webinar this past week on the winter weather outlook. And so he's a really crucial part. He's how I got my job. I met him when he was a principal of a school at Mattock East Middle School, and I was doing an educational kite making workshop, and he asked if I would do kite workshops at Blue Hill. I started doing just the kite workshops, and then that led to my current position there after 23 years.
Sure. The staff that you have, the observers that you have, talk a little bit about their background and their duties.
Sure. So we're very fortunate to have our observer in charge, Matt Douglas. We kind of go back and forth calling him the chief observer or the observer in charge. He actually started working for the observatory in the 1990s when he was in high school, and he trained along our observer, Dr. Robert Skilling. Yeah, he's not a doctor, but he's good enough to be called a doctor. But Robert Skilling, who was the chief observer for the National Weather Service when it was being operated by the Weather Service in the 1990s, and Bob Skilling continued to work for us through 2018, and he started at the observatory in 1960.
Wow.
So we're very fortunate. We have a lot of people who are dedicated to the observatory and continue for a very, very long time. As I mentioned, Matt worked at the observatory in the 90s, and then he moved away to Pennsylvania, but came back a few years ago and moved into the position of chief observer. And he trains the other observers. Right now, he's just finishing up the training for a new observer named Josh. And so we have two one-day observers, Josh and Amanda, who are both students at UMass Lowell. And a lot of our observers start with us as interns, either as a college intern or even some of our high school interns have continued on to positions at the observatory. And I'm very proud that two of our high school interns are now broadcast meteorologists up in Burlington, Vermont at NBC5. So we really do a lot of educational development that spreads around the world.
Yes, yeah. And it's two different forms of science, right? Observing and meteorology. You're not forecasting, you're observing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Matt has all the skills to forecast.
For sure.
He does it for himself, for fun, basically.
Yes, yeah.
But that's not in our job description. The job description is all about the observing and the reporting of the data that is happening and has happened.
Right.
And so you do not have to be a meteorologist meteorologist to be a weather observer. It doesn't require as much math as meteorology does, but both Amanda and Josh are getting degrees in atmospheric science. So they can officially be called meteorologists by our definition, which means a degree in meteorology.
Okay.
Don Kent didn't have a degree in meteorologist, but I don't think anyone would ever argue about whether he was a meteorologist or not. He was a spectacular meteorologist. And I like to tell people he was a Harvard-trained meteorologist because he interned and shadowed at Blue Hill Observatory under Dr. Charles Brooks. And at that time, the observatory was being operated by Harvard. So even though he didn't take classes at Harvard, he trained with Dr. Brooks. He volunteered at the observatory, did a lot of work. Dr. Brooks was kind enough to let him study and learn next to the observers. And so Don Kent learned quite a bit, and he was a friend to the observatory right up until his death.
That's great. Of course, he got his start right here in Quincy on the roof of Kent's Carpet Land out on Quincy Shore Drive years ago.
Yep.
You brought some great pictures we want to show folks of the observatory, if we can, and bring up the first one. There you see that's a current picture, right?
That was taken by a friend of mine, Clark Linehan, who's also a ski instructor at Blue Hill Ski Area and a professional photographer. And after the renovation was complete, we said, can you come up and document the renovation? And so that's what it looks like now. The cool thing is, other than the really nice coating on the tower itself, the building looks exactly the same today as it did in 1908. It is a National Historic Landmark, has been since 1989. And so even though the very top part, the part above what are called the dentals, is brand new, it is built exactly the same as the parapet that was there in 1908. So it looks exactly the same, but it's in much, much, much more durable condition than it was in 2021 when the renovation started.
Yes, much more accessible as well, right? That's a key factor.
Yes, we don't have elevators, but we've improved the wheelchair access to get into the building. Folks who are in a wheelchair that want to see the observatory, we have some large screen monitors in the history room, and to get to see the stuff on the second, third, and rooftop, we set you up with a tablet and we zoom with a guide going to the observer's room, looking at the real-time data and reporting what's there. Go to the third floor and give a quick glance around there, and then go to the top so you can see what the view is from the top, even though you can unfortunately only get to the ground floor. But we're able to accommodate folks who are wheelchair bound, people who are on walkers. We've installed a really improved railing system to get from the bottom to the top, so most folks in walkers can do it. Usually what they do is they'll get from the ground floor to the second floor, sit in a chair, take a short rest, go from the second floor to the third floor, take a short rest, and then go from the third floor to the roof so that they are able to see the very popular view from the roof.
Nice, nice. Let's bring up the next one, and there's the crew.
Yes, so this is the grand reopening back in July, and the young man with the scissors is one of our summer interns who started by attending a program we have called Launch Your Meteorology Career. And we are very excited to have him do a nice presentation of what Blue Hill Observatory means to him. And then he had the honor of cutting the ribbon and welcoming everyone into the building.
Very nice. Only got a couple of minutes, but I want to be able to show the rest of it.
Sure. So that's the tool that everyone says, what's that?
It's great.
And I like to joke, it's the tool the meteorologists really use to make the forecast. They gaze into the crystal ball. But no, it's a tool called the Campbell-Stokes Sunshine Recorder, and it's one of the many examples of that long-term homogeneous data. We've used a Campbell-Stokes Sunshine Recorder since 1886, and it tells us the minutes of bright sunshine for each day by burning a hole in the special measuring card.
The old magnifying glass trick from when you were a kid, right?
That's right. Just a very, very sophisticated magnifying glass with a very specific time measuring tool to tell us what time it was clear and what time it was cloudy for each minute of the day. We turn that into a percentage, and that's one of the few parameters that hasn't changed a lot. Our overall percentage is still around 52%.
Oh, okay. Check out the next one here.
Yep. So this is the part of the Mish-Michaels Hall for Scientific Discovery, and the corner we're looking at on the right is our real-time weather, and then the glass case on the left has actual readouts from a tool called the Belfort Aerovane, and then a bunch of historic instruments so people can see tools of the past that we have used working alongside actual recording instruments.
It's neat, yeah. And we
Yeah.
see the more
Yep.
modern days facility here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a great blend of old and new. You can see the computers, but then the display with the dials and the chart recorders actually go back to the 1960s. That left-hand chart measures each mile of air that passes the building. The right-hand chart is connected to what's called the peak gust recorder, and the technology for both of those recorders dates all the way back to 1960, and they are designed, built, and calibrated like the ones going all the way back to 1885.
The website is a great resource to go to, both to learn about the observatory, but also to get your weather data, which is archived on the website as well.
Yes, it is.
And arrange for tours, right?
Yes, you can either just show up Saturdays and Sundays and most holidays except for Thanksgiving and Christmas between 10 and 4. We will be open the Friday after Thanksgiving. And then in addition to just showing up on those times, you can make arrangements for tours 7 days a week.
Excellent. Don, really appreciate the opportunity to learn about the observatory, and I hope we helped get the message out for you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Speaking of the weather, one more check of it for you today. Really nice, actually. Lots of sunshine, just a few clouds into the mid-40s. The low 30s this evening, repeat tomorrow, and then the warm-up begins on Wednesday and into Thursday, probably Friday as well. Thanks again to Don McCaslin for joining us here from the Blue Hill Weather Observatory. Thank you to our crew. Thank you for watching Friday here in the show. We'll chat with friends of the Thomas Crane Public Library. Meantime, head to our website, qatv.org. All our latest programs, news and information, video on demand, live streaming, and more. For all of us, I'm Joe Catalano. Have a great week. Thank you. Good job.